Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today, taking up a summer Saturday, being in community. And maybe I'll just say a few things to start. First of all, I just really want to thank Monique and the director of the Garrison Institute Fellowship, Dr. Angel Acosta, and the Garrison and my fellow Garrison Fellows for really being my family during the pandemic, and my family from here on out. So I'm just so grateful for what this has meant to me, and being part of this Garrison Fellowship has been just something I wish everyone could have the opportunity to do, to be part of a caring, supportive community in which to follow one's heart. So let's see what else I'd like to acknowledge here. First of all, I'd just like to invite us all to think of this more as a gathering of community than as a presentation or a workshop. If we were all together in one room, we might be sitting in a circle and arriving in presence and just being open to what is here, to what is wanting to emerge. And this is really an invitation for myself too, whenever I feel like I might get agenda driven or pressured to be conveying or communicating content or information, just to really rest back in the home of presence that we are gifted to by life. Also wanted to frame this as a co-exploration. So when I have been exploring this practice of ally work with my co-presenters and some of the folks who will be sharing in the discussion, really frame this as a co-exploration so that we are all equal here. It isn't teacher and student or therapist and client. We're really acknowledging the uniqueness of each of us. And as the Sufis would say, that we each have our own private face to the divine. So I'd want to invite us into this spirit of co-exploration, because there is so much more that we don't know than any of us know. So it's all a journey. I just want to thank all of you again for being here, and so nice to see familiar dear faces, and folks who are new to meeting you today. I want to say just a touch about the imaginal. There's a lot of ways we might talk about the imaginal, but I will say simply that this is a real dimension of existence, of being, that in our modern Western world has been marginalized and erased, and not even given any credence through the lens of scientific empiricism, where the only thing that is real is what is measurable through the senses. And we all have a connection to the imaginal. We always have. And the simplest way some of us are familiar with that is with dream life, So we all share this foundation in the imaginal already. We're also going to be exploring, not necessarily practicing, but orienting to the practice of ally work. So as we connect to the imaginal, relationally, we may be invited or called to encounter what we might call the inner guide or the ally. And we'll be speaking more about that as we go along. So, all that said, I'm going to now briefly introduce my co-presenters. And I just really want to highlight how organic this unfolding has been. You know, I came into this fellowship wanting to explore the practice of ally work more deeply. And I felt very alone. And along the way, I started co-exploring with Michael, and then later on with Susan and Carol and others who are here today. And they've been so generous of their time as volunteers just to be my co-hosts. And it's been such a relief to me to take off the load of holding this gathering as one person and to make it more of a collective holding. So I want to both thank and introduce Carol Burbank, who's in Maryland outside of Washington, DC. You'll see these folks coming on the screen more as we go along. Susan Cooper, who is at the edge of the Canadian Rockies in Alberta, a lover of the wilderness, and another lover of land and nature, Michael Silverstein-Bode, who is right here with me in Portland, Oregon. And I've had the great fortune to be in community with Michael through our work in mindfulness education through Peace in Schools for many years. So we go back. All right, I'm going to turn it over to to Susan, who is going to lead us in a grounding. And what I will say is, now, while we aren't able to bring in the same structure that we bring in one-on-one or group practice into this session, we'll be using a mirror of that structure. So when we are working together in practice, we'll go through these 7 prompts: grounding, intention, a check-in around how practice is going, exploring how we're connecting to the practice, what are we learning, how are we integrating it in our lives, and what are we grateful for. So in our structure today, we'll be loosely kind of following that that flow. And now I will turn it over to Susan, who is going to lead us into some grounding. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thanks, Barnaby. Welcome, everyone. So wonderful to be here. I'm noticing all the chats that are coming up, and just being here a few minutes in advance too, we could see what sorts of ways people were arriving. And for some of us, that was, you know, like a mountain of family and things to do, and, you know, climbing that and arriving here. And for some others, it was as just a very simple step in the right direction. But of course, grounding is a very good place to start, regardless of how you arrive. And so I invite everyone to just kind of get comfortable. Take a deep breath if that helps, and settle in quietly, just quiet. Close your eyes if that feels good and right. And perhaps shake off all that stuff of what it took to get here. Inwardly shake it off like a dog, you know, shakes off water, shake it off. Let it go. All the things left undone, or all the things to do next, let it go. All the anticipations, even for this work together, let it go. Just for now, just relax. Be here now. Deep exhale tells the body that it's okay to relax. So I invite you to that. And from this relaxing place, let's gently allow attention, that incredible gift, Allow your attention to drop into the body. And take a moment to sense just exactly how you are in this moment. This vast kaleidoscopic cosmic compilation that is the body. Just notice how it is. And pardon me, again, just take a moment to let it unwind where it needs to. Let this process of quieting, centering, let it feel really good. Give yourself permission to feel really good. And again, another breath to ease our way, to show our way. And into this easing, as it continues, perhaps, like a pebble in a well, drop into this space that's creating itself. The word spacious. Just drop it in there. Let it go. Maybe repeat it to yourself again, spacious. Just notice what happens. Spacious. Perhaps let the word spacious do its work as we enter this relational field. Let it create itself. Spacious. A particular kind of emptiness. And let the spaciousness, let it be lovely. Let it be lovely. And as clear and as open and as spacious as you might be in this moment, let's drop attention again, deeper, through some of the layers, It's time, sense for a little spot of magnetism, deep belly, the hara. Let it pull you in. This deep point of contact can provide for us the sensation of being held. It feels like the ground of being itself. Sensation of being held, of being centered, of being steady, of being deeply capable of being in this space. It shows us how to stay, not fly off into holiness or distraction. Stay in the body, stay present. Stay present. And now maybe with another breath, and like a tree both rooted and rising, can you allow yourself to experience simultaneously, all at the same time, both this centeredness, this presence, and the spaciousness? Can you feel both embodied and free? from this space, we can be strong enough, receptive enough, unconditional enough to do our exploring. And so let us commence. Your eyes are closed. Slowly open them now. And perhaps with an inner gentle smile or an outer one. Look up into our shared space. And from this grounded and open heart, belly, say namaste. Namaste to each other and to the space that we're creating and to what wishes to emerge amongst us today. May we meet each other in presence. May we meet it all in presence. May we offer our presence. Namaste and Amen.
Thank you, dear Susan. What a lovely way to ground, to be, and to see each other. I'm going to invite us to do a little just brief journal reflection prompt. So if you don't have a journal, you could find something to type on your computer or just in your mind. It's a simple prompt just to sit with for a moment. Perhaps you might have a few sentences come up. The question is, what's your intention for being here today? Just see what arises with that prompt organically. Don't have to think about it too much, like listening to the heart. What's your intention for being here today? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link in the chat. And this is going to be a way for us to kind of see anonymously each other's, or an aspect of each other's intentions. So this will be a link to what they call Mentimeter. And there'll be a place, 3 lines for you to enter 3 words. So out of your intention, see if you can pick out 3 words, 3 words that symbolize or summarize your intention for today. So for me, it was service, love, and hope. So you can click on this link and type 1 word per line. And then I'll start. Actually, hold on here. Let me make sure the right question is up. Okay. Are you all seeing, perhaps someone could tell me in the chat, are you seeing the, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, good, you're seeing that. So what are 3 words that represent your intention for being here? Thank you. You can just go ahead and fill that out. See, connection is coming through the strongest, and community. Love and learning. Exploration and imagination. And so many other beautiful words. Deep wisdom, heart knowing. Just take a moment to sit with these, to let these be like words written in light from the light of our hearts as a gift to each of us. Thank you so much, everybody. And I will perhaps take a picture of those later and send them in the follow-up email. So we've got another check-in, and oh, dear me, you didn't see those. Okay, let me come back to it here, see if I can pull those up. Share screen. And oh, you did see them. Okay. Got it. Got it. Okay, now to our next prompt. Glad that worked. So next prompt is, and this will be a poll, so you don't have to think about this one in advance. And let me move us to the next slide. Is this already coming up for you? How experienced are you with the imaginal? I see some prompts there. Perhaps someone can mention in the chat if you're seeing that question. It came up first. Okay. Thank you. So let me share the screen on that one just to make sure you're seeing it. So yeah, compassionate practice and technology. So here we have a little reflection on our experience for the imaginal. 25% have a lot of experience, and just got the numbers. I'll let that sit for a few minutes or a moment. See how that changes. Okay, so we're pretty balanced in our distribution. About 30% of folks have a little experience, about 40% some experience, and 30% a lot. So we've got a good range of experience here. And I'll give that just a few more seconds in case somebody else wants to add. Okay, so thanks for sharing, everyone. So I'm going to move into a little bit of more formal presentation mode. But I do want to say, I don't know if you know the story of Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill. It was like his eternal torment. And I think for me, like having to create a powerful PowerPoint presentation for eternity would be my equivalent of rolling a rock up a hill. So I was really struggling with this. I felt like I'd been eaten by a snake and I was just being slowly digested. And I also realized, like, wait, I'm the one who put myself in this snake in the first place. So I was really struggling with it. And at one point I thought, what if I like say, screw all of these slides, you know, there's a Aleutian indigenous elder who's like, should never present from slides, you just speak from the heart. And Steve Jobs hated slides too. So I'm like, that's two kind of like good points of view. But we ended up with two sections I'll have. First one is coming out of that space where I couldn't work with the slides. And then I just got my index cards, this stack of index cards a couple nights ago, and just started writing down thoughts, a flow of thoughts. And so I'll read you that flow. So that would be a more like feeling based sharing about what this practice and journey has meant to me. And then I'll go into some more formal slides. Okay, so this will probably be about 25 minutes in total. So I'll just pull up the beginning of this. So just feel, imagine this is like grown-up story time. Just kind of kick back and relax. There's nothing you have to do. I wondered when I wrote this, like, what is the voice that this is coming from? I was like, is it like 12-year-old Barnaby? If there's something that was more simple than like professional Garrison fellow Barnaby, and I really liked it. So here we go. What we're explaining is so complex, you can't really put it into words. That's why I'll try to keep it simple. In the modern world, we're conditioned to believe that the only thing that exists is matter. The body is matter and the mind is matter. I believe this was true for a very long time. And to be honest, I still think this way a lot. So even though I've meditated for 25 years, it's still easy to think that the world is matter. What changed for me is that I started talking to a being that I can't see. In modern America, that sounds crazy because we only believe in matter. What I learned is that there's a way to communicate through the heart. There were some particular experts on this. Islamic mystics. They lived 1,000 years ago and only got translated into English in the last 50 years. I feel like what they discovered is going to be a next spirituality, like yoga and mindfulness. Both of those were ways to make deep spiritualities accessible for normal people. That's what I feel the practice of ally work is. Taking a deep spirituality and making it accessible. The deep spirituality of the Islamic mystics, that if we communicate through the heart, we can meet what a Harvard professor calls our divine double. That's the name of the book he wrote about it. Another professor said about his book, if everybody connected to their divine double, it would totally transform society. Which is why I'm giving this presentation today. It was so important for me to figure out how to share what I learned, that I had to leave a really good career and the reputation as an expert in order to follow my heart and share about the practice I'd learned to connect to the divine double, the inner teacher. There was once a culture in the Middle East thousands of years ago called the Sabians. They believed that the most important teacher, more important than any prophet, was the inner teacher. You could look at a star to connect with your inner teacher, or go to a temple to the inner teacher, or just look inside your heart. They knew that we had a wisdom inside us, as good as any Zen master, more personal than any Zen master, and cheaper than a therapist too. The Sufis called it the private phase or the special phase. Everyone has a private phase to the divine. That's where we meet our inner teacher, our ally. The Sufis talked about the imaginal world. It's like this world, but a lot bigger. Imagine a ring in a vast desert, they'd say. The size of that ring is the physical world. The size of the desert that contains that ring, that's the imaginal world. They say that when we connect to our heart becomes a sense organ, an organ of imagination. We feel into the imaginal world with a felt sense. It's like a spidey sense that we grow through practice. And the practice is really easy. Well, what do they say? Simple, but not easy. The key is you have to fake it till you make it. But it's simple. If you know how to write, you can do it. You just sit down with a notebook and say, "Hello, ally." Maybe you say, "What's your name?" And you sit and listen very quietly, like watching a mouse hole to see if it pokes its nose out. And as you listen, sometimes words will form the voice of your ally. And it feels meaningful. And later on, you think back and say to yourself, was that just BS? But you don't totally believe that. Because slowly but surely, things are starting to change. Little magic things start happening. Synchronicities. Or even challenging things. New things. But you feel like you're growing. And you feel alive. And you remember back when you were a kid and you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or The Lord of the Rings, and you wanted to feel that feeling they gave you, that life was more than just living and dying, getting a job. It had a meaning and a feeling that was bigger than you could ever imagine. And here you are, talking to a bunch of people about something you don't quite understand. You just feel it's important. So that was part one. And thank you so much for just receiving what for me is like vulnerable to share, like from the heart in that way. Now I'm going to go into more professional mode. And I'm going to share my screen. Actually, hold on a sec. Let's get out of that. What is our destiny, individually and collectively? Ibn Arabi, the greatest Islamic teacher, says this: the ultimate destiny of the entire world is to reach the dwelling place of pure pardon and superlative compassion. Here are our core pillars as Garrison Fellows: awareness-based contemplative wisdom, science of interconnection, generative action, and collective healing. With these pillars, each of us in our own way, in service to that ultimate destiny. Dr. Dan Siegel, our mentor, sums up the crises we face as 5 pandemics: the viral pandemic, social injustice, environmental, misinformation, and identity isolation, our lack of belonging. He says at the root of them all is the lie of the separate self. I spoke of materialism. The philosopher Bernardo Kastrup talks about how deeply we're embedded in the view that everything is matter. He says it's nearly impossible for any person inserted in a modern cultural context to escape the haze of the zeitgeist and develop a truly unbiased, critical, and personal worldview. How will we escape that haze and become our true self? We can't think our way out of it. We need to be in a different relationship to our being. Henry Corbin, the French academic and mystic, is as important as Carl Jung to our Western consciousness. His 20th century translations of the Islamic mystics, Ibn Arabi, Avicenna, and Suhrawardi, have been life-changing for me. Corbin said this, and first a note: the word fravarti in this quote means personal spirit. It's the Zoroastrian correlate to the term ally. The history of the modern West is the history of people without their fravarti. It is this fravarti which gives its true dimension to the person. The human person is only a person by virtue of this celestial dimension, archetypal, angelic, which is the celestial pole without which the terrestrial pole of his human dimension is completely depolarized in vagabondage and perdition. As Dan Siegel might say, the perdition of the lie of the separate self. What is the next contemplative practice? What's the next yoga? What's the next mindfulness? What's the next non-duality? Have we reached the end of spirituality, or is there a next practice to emerge? Let's look at science and three scientific perspectives: neuroscience, quantum physics, and contemplative science. This is Poppy Schoenberg and David Varga, two contemplative neuroscientists. They map a way forward by saying unified compassion, unconditional love, is the developmental endgame of all contemplative practice. Unified compassion reflects the cumulative practice and integration from the preceding tiers: neurointegrative, concentration, insight, non-dual, representing an ultimate trait-like base of operation. Here's a graphic from their paper. Note how unified compassion, or unconditional love, is the apex, the culmination of practice. In this graphic, we start with relaxation and embodiment, develop concentration, cultivate insight, know ourselves as non-dual awareness, all the foundation for unconditional love. Let's turn now to another science, to what quantum physics has to say about reality. All reality is interaction, says Carlo Rovelli. What is real and foundational is our dynamic interrelationship, our interdependence, or our interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say. All reality is interaction. Reality is fundamentally relational. And now to the contemplative science, back to the greatest teacher, Ibn Arabi. All of existence is imagination within imagination. Ibn Arabi wrote 800 books in his lifetime. About 400 of them are verified authentically, including his masterpiece, this book, The Futuhat, the openings revealed in Mecca. A 10,000-page book about life, the universe, and everything. A book that he describes as being transmitted to him by his ally, whom he encountered while circling the Kaaba at Mecca at the age of 36. The 10,000 pages of the Futuhat were engraved on the imaginal body of his ally in light. The Futuhat might be the most profound collaboration between human and ally in the existence, in the history of spiritual texts. By the way, this translation is just coming out in English for the first time in 2018. It's going to be about 19 volumes, and it's a dear teacher for me. So this quote, all of existence is imagination within imagination. The essence of the divine is creative imagination. As humans, we participate in this essence. We flash in and out of existence in the quantum foam, our very being, a continual rebirthing of our unique vision of the universe. Extracting the essence of these three scientific views, three faces of the divine: unconditional love, relationality, imagination. What's the next spirituality? We've been gifted precious treasures, foundations of awakeness, the embodiment of yoga, the attention of mindfulness and non-duality, knowing oneself as awareness. What's the next spirituality? Let's add the new ingredients to the mix, our new focal dimensions: unconditional love, our ultimate base, as those scientists said, and our destiny, as Ibn Arabi said. Relationality, our quantum physical reality, as Ravelli says. And creative imagination, the very nature of our existence, says Ibn Arabi. So what if the next spirituality is not just a practice? What if the next spirituality is a relationship? The love that exists between the ally and his partner is like no other love, and seems to include all other kinds of love. That's from Dr. Jeffrey Raff, from his book, The Practice of Ally Work. I personally think of Dr. Jeffrey Raff as like the John Kabat-Zinn, who seeded so much of mindfulness. I think of him as the John Kabat-Zinn of ally work, in making a deep practice accessible through like a simple algorithm of practice. Here's the talk and the workshop where I learned of the practice of ally work from him in 2019. I'd never heard of him. I ended up there by accident, or rather synchronicity. And it was one of the very last occasions he taught before he retired from public teaching. He learned about ally work and the alchemical tradition when studying at the Jung Institute in Zurich in the 1970s. His teacher was the great Marie-Louise von Franz, Carl Jung's colleague. Here's Marie-Louise von Franz. She believed the great task of the West was to reconcile science and spirituality. On her deathbed in 1997, a Princeton-trained theoretical physicist visited her and asked her, "Where should us Westerners turn?" She immediately said, "You have to read Henry Corbin and study Arab alchemy." She then mentioned spiritual body and celestial earth, Corbin, one of Corbin's books. She said, that is where Western science could get new insight regarding a broader concept of reality. Here's an imaginal family tree I created, a pruned Western lineage of this practice of ally work from ancient Egypt down to today. I won't go into each family member on this tree, but it's really been this deep Western tradition that has been suppressed by religious authorities in so many ways. It's very much, you could say, the divine feminine that has been suppressed. So, with the ingredient of relationality, we can go from presence to relational presence, a dynamic, interactive, communicative field of being. With the ingredient of imagination, we go from institutional spirituality to personalized spirituality. Everyone has a private face to the divine. That's where we meet our inner teacher, our ally. And with the ingredient of unconditional love, we go from seeking to service. And with our ally, we are guided to our calling, even to our destiny. So we come full circle. The ultimate destiny of the entire world is to reach the dwelling place of pure pardon and superlative compassion. Let's take a pause for a few breaths after all those words and gather ourselves in presence. Okay, so I just wanted to open up the space for any questions, reflections, inquiries that are coming up for you right now. Just take a moment to digest all of that by bringing in the community. And I believe, Monique, if you could just facilitate by calling on any hands, thank you. Here's one way I would respond to that. And I think, first of all, what I'd say is a very simple analogy for me is that we as humans are kind of existing in a four-dimensional, if you include time, context. And I would see the ally as being like a higher dimensional mode of being. So let's say a fifth dimension, for example. So when we're using fourth dimensional language, it can be really hard to understand a structure that's beyond our everyday conception. So I think it can be a thing like it's yes, no, and both. Do you know what I mean? So from one perspective, it's us and it's part of us. From another perspective, it's differentiated. From another perspective, we form a unit. from another perspective, there's just one dynamic field of being interrelating in flow. So that's what comes up for me in response. And I say this not as an expert, but that's what I feel into. As a co-explorer, that's my response to you. Yeah, because it just presences this spirit of co-exploration so deeply. When I do co-explorations with the folks I've done them with, I often think, wow, these folks are like, it comes so much more easily to them than me. And speaking to this ground, it was really important for me when I attended Raff's workshop that he said, it's important to have a strong ego to do this work. And he's using language from the Jungian tradition, but an individuated, developed ego. And he gave a rule of thumb from his experience working with people that you need to be 30 years old to do this, to have developed to a certain degree. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I feel like it may be meaningful. In terms of grounding, I think it's really important for me to embed this in my practice of mindfulness and that ability to come into the body, and then have a regular place in my apartment where I sit to build an energy of like sanctuary. And then also just to be really, really compassionate, to know that this ally, this relationship, to understand that it is both something that I can grow, but also something that already is. So really easing off of this pressure around spiritual practice and cultivation that we can sometimes get into, this spiritual materialism, to really be gentle with ourselves. And, you know, I love that Raff says, you know, if you're ever doing practice and you're feeling like off balance, just stop doing it, right? Come back when you're ready. So that's a starting point for my response. Okay, I can certainly recommend Raff's book, The Practice of Ally Work. It's funny, I, you know, come back to it every now and then and I read through it. I'm like, wow, it's such an amazing reflection of how my practice has unfolded. In Raff's understanding and my understanding, he uses the term psychoid. So there's, from the Jungian psychology, if we were to look from the perspective of psyche, we might have archetypes or inner figures or dream figures that we work with that we might understand as projections of our own psyche. And both Raff and Jung, now Jung was trying to present his work scientifically. So he, for example, didn't publish the Red Book till after his death. So internally, he really believed in these psychoidal beings like his own guide Philemon. So these beings, spirit beings, have an existence outside of our own psyche or consciousness. So in that sense, we are in relation to a broader ecosystem, a broader spiritual ecosystem. And from, now I'm not expert on the shamanic perspective, but yes, I think there is something that I've thought to myself, this ally work, it's very focused on this one being, the one that is like the divine double, this counterpart to us. And so there's a lot of spiritual literature that emphasizes this one personal individual relationship. And the imaginal world and the spiritual universe is large. So there's all kinds of spiritual beings that will be spoken of in different traditions. And for me, as you could say, a beginner in some ways, that's why I found it so grounding to focus on the ally, because I know that this is a being that is of me or of my personal being. And it's like a guide to these other realms. So it's like I have a safe keeper to maybe enter further into the imaginal. And I think in Raff's book, in a later exercise, he talks about how you can use the ally as a way to introduce you to other beings. And I will say, you know, from the Islamic perspective, if we think of each of us having a personal face to the divine or a private face to the divine or a private our own name of the divine, that's not where it ends. It's not just like, okay, now all my attention goes to the ally. As in the Islamic consideration, through one name, we can know all the names of the divine. And the nameless divinity. So this guide isn't this internal teacher, or depending on your point of view, psychoid being isn't the end all, but it is to support us in our growth and journey in this lifetime, and perhaps over multiple lifetimes. I think there's something very interesting about what is the relationship between ally and multiple lifetimes. And I don't want to get into too much theory here, so I'll leave it there. I do want to move on, just to be mindful of time. I'm trying to find a balance between listening to where the group's energy is and also being mindful of our schedule. So before we go into a break, I want to open it up to a dear friend of mine, Michael. And I can't tell you how alone I felt on this journey. I went to the workshop, I connected with this practice. I wanted the fellowship to be about me helping Raff to spread his work. And he essentially retired, and I couldn't even get a phone call with him. And so there were two people, one who's a mentor who'll go unnamed because she's a very private person. So she was like the mother. If Raff was my father, she was the mother who guided me. And then as a co-explorer, Michael, who's someone who just lives from the heart so deeply, he and I started to connect. So I'll just give you some space, Michael, to tell a little bit about your story.
Thanks, Barnaby, and thanks everybody for gathering today. It's already just such a treat to be in this emerging space with everybody who's focusing their attention on what's possible with the imaginal and with the ally. So I'm going to just share a little bit about how my journey with ally practice unfolded and what it looks like today. And before I kind of go into it, I think it's so important to explain from my perspective how everybody has a completely different experience with this. And so as I was thinking about what I wanted to say today, I really wanted to make sure that no one walked away thinking that they should have the experience that I'm having, or that I should have the experience that someone else is having. That's kind of the preface to this. I've been a meditation teacher for about 9 years, a lifelong wilderness enthusiast. And a couple of years ago, I was noticing that my life was in transition. And so in a moment of wanting to really find out what was next for me in my life, I went out to the desert for 10 days. And 3.5 of those days were fasting, alone, and with no tent, with minimal gear or protection. And I was doing ceremony out there, and I was praying, and I was asking questions, big questions like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Where do I go next in my life? What's my place in the world? How can we heal the world? And there are these different ceremonies that I was working with that might invite some answers to those questions. So I was doing this, and I was kind of waiting for an epiphany of sorts. And what happened, which is really interesting, is that on the second day of the fast, I started to get connected with this voice. And this was before I started co-exploring the imaginal and ally practice with Barnaby. Before I'd read Jeffrey Raff's book, I had a little bit of sort of knowledge that realm existed, but I hadn't done any real practice with it. But this voice came in, which I called the voice of the heart. And as I was asking kind of all these big questions about life and myself, I was kind of asking them to the desert, or in the ceremony, and what came was, oh, I have access to all of this information already within me. And it came through this voice of the heart. And what was cool is I had my journal out there and I started doing this dialoguing practice with what I was calling my heart. And I did a lot of it, and I was not planning on doing this, but I spent days doing this sort of journaling, dialoguing practice. And had a lot of time out there, you know, alone, and wasn't eating meals, filled up a lot of a journal with this dialogue. And then towards the end of the experience, I was sort of, I had this one final question, which was like, what's my purpose for being alive? And what came at the end of this experience from the voice of the heart, instead of like, oh, it's a specific vocation or, you know, a particular thing, the wisdom that came was that my purpose is this ever unfolding present moment and ongoing relationship with my heart, or with the divine through my heart. And so that was really beautiful. I came home, I was really lit up about it. And then I started to talk to Barnaby, and he started to tell me about these awesome books that he was showing in the slideshow. And we spent several months having a series of co-explorations, doing more formal ally practice and more structured relating about it. And it was so cool because I had this kind of organic experience of coming to the ally, and now I'm learning that, oh, this is a practice that this guy Jeffrey Raff has a whole book about, and all these other mystics throughout time have talked about, and there's all these indigenous perspectives across the world, across time. So that it was just been a really lovely year of exploring that with Barnaby, and I'm so grateful to have been part of your path with that, Barnaby. And so today, what has been really interesting is feeling into how does my relationship with the ally integrate with my everyday life and with my work. And so with the fast that I did in the desert and this ally practice has come a shift in my work. And I now, I started this project called Heartland, which takes people out into natural places to connect them with the sacred. And so we do some ceremonies, and we work with some plants and find creative ways to get in touch with ourselves and the natural world and really the sacred. What I decided to do for this project was to have the ally be at the front of everything I was doing, to be in full collaboration with the ally, which, by the way, the voice of the heart, I came to understand as my ally through the co-explorations with Barnaby. So it's been really interesting to, you know, as I was creating the project, creating the vision statement or the framework, I would be in communication with the ally to invite it to be a collaborator with me. And every step of the way was me being in collaboration with my heart, with the ally. And now as I have journeys and go out with people into the wilderness, my ally is invited to collaborate in the planning process and to be out there with us. And it's been just such an incredible integration that I didn't expect, and a real blessing. So I guess I want to kind of conclude this short story by just saying how exciting it is to be in community today and co-exploring with all of you and being part of the emergence of this community and of this practice kind of getting some more steam. So thank you all for being here and participating, and really exciting to see what will emerge.
Thanks so much, Michael. I really appreciate you sharing your story and being on continued journeys as co-explorers together. Let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back and we'll hear from some more folks who have been exploring the practice together. Okay, so we're going to be moving into, as I said, a discussion of folks who have been exploring the practice with me one-on-one or in small groups. And I really appreciate what you said, Michael, about who's painting. Oh, sorry, that was a private message. The painting behind me is a Portland artist. Yeah. I appreciate what you said, Michael, about the uniqueness of how this practice shows up for different folks. And I really want to emphasize, I think it's important in this moment to name what you touched in on, Michael, is like, there's so many like names for the ally or variations in how it might be conceived, like forms or, but I do feel like there's this thread that weaves through. And so there's this language of the term culturally specific. So there's so many culturally specific ways, right? Just as personally specific ways. So in a sense, we are a culture too. And so what I've loved so much about this co-exploration is it reminds me of the phrase from Dan Siegel of integration is linking the differentiated parts. So when we come together in group, I can see like, wow, like I'm feeling the same thing as you and you express it in like maybe a different way or with different images, or maybe for you, it's more connected to art. And for me, it's reading Islamic mystics. Yeah. So I want to name that and to invite us into discussion. These are folks I've been exploring practice with, and why don't we just get into a conversation? So it's really an opportunity to hear how this exploration lives in different bodies, different beings. So I'm just going to open up the question to whoever would like to respond. What are you noticing about exploring this relationship to the ally? And the process of that exploration? You don't need to raise your hand, you can just start speaking.
I'll start. I want to say that what I'm noticing is that many of the expectations I brought into the exploration with the ally have were not fulfilled. But what was fulfilled, and they don't really matter because it was just, you know, I made up some stories about what it would be, and it turned out that they were none of them really relevant, that there's something organic about this process and consistently transforming. So what I've noticed is that what I need to bring is a sense of intentional listening that it leaves me open to possibility and discovery. And that in itself is the thing that I've been most grateful for as the process continues. Because so much has fallen away around it, and that's had profound impact on my way of being in the world that I don't even know how to measure that. So I can't really tell you exactly stories about that. It's more of a felt truth.
I can respond when you asked the question. The first thing I noticed was a feeling in my chest that felt like a flower that was like continually blooming from the inside, opening up as though more petals were just endlessly forming from the inside and creating this like cascade, like of heart opening. And that, you know, Carol, you mentioned this, it's this continual unfolding, right? This continual, and there is a sense for me of unexpectedness to it. And I'm also grateful for Michael, you know, sharing, you know, that there's no one way that this looks. And, you know, I hear stories like Michael, and I love hearing stories like Michael's because it's so far from my lived experience. Like, I am not the person who goes on vision quests in the woods. I have a very like suburban life in Texas, and you know, taking my kids to school, going to, you know, but realizing that there is the opportunity for that sacred relationship with the ally, like in the middle of the woods, on a vision quest at the top of a mountain sitting by a lake and on the aisle of the grocery store. And so for me, in my, you know, my ally practice relationship, and I suppose I had been developing sort of a relationship with my ally, though I didn't have language for it until I met Barnaby, and he introduced me to the practice. And I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like, you know, it's sort of similar to what Michael shared. That sounds like what I've been doing in my journaling. I would sort of have these free write journal experiences. And then, you know, I'd be writing in my voice, and then suddenly this other voice would come in. I'm like, who's writing this? Like, what is this voice? And then I started noticing this like conversation that would be going on, you know, and I started referring to myself as like, there's human Jennifer, and then I didn't know what the other, you know, there's the beyond Jennifer, and then this new word, the celestial Jennifer, and then, you know, and it's like, oh, that's the ally. And so I'd have these be like, oh, look, human Jennifer's in the pantry eating tortilla chips when she should be working on her paper. You know, what's going on with, you know, I wonder what's going on here. And then really kind of building this relationship, and noticing, like, for me, how much of a sense of humor my ally has. And because human Jennifer tends to take things very seriously and like get really stuck in like this, like, oh, I gotta, you know, and you know, my ally will, you know, come in with these like really playful, like invite me into more playfulness and invite me into kind of like, oh, I don't have to take this, you know, I can be serious and attend to serious business with a sense of lightness. So that's another piece that I've noticed in my relationship in this process. It's that it's my relationship with my ally is inviting me in to a sort of playfulness and that sort of like almost that divine child aspect of myself.
I can just say a quick thing. Sort of that loneliness you were speaking of, Barnaby, and I think probably a lot of us have experienced that because the ally has come in, or whatever we call it, has come in, and we don't know what to do with it. We don't even know if it's real. We don't even know if we're sane. So one of the beauties that I've experienced in exploring this together is the validation, and how powerful that validation can be in my giving permission to myself to deepen this relationship and to trust it and to learn and to allow the ally to teach me how to be in that relationship. But the validation really was an important part for me. And the community part does that. We can't, it's almost like we can't, in a way, we can't do this alone. This is not an alone business. Although we are solitary in it, it's we need each other.
I just want to jump in as a a very new practitioner of the ally practice in just a matter of weeks, and want to reflect. There's something in what you said, Susan, around the not knowing. That part has been so fresh and alive for me. The fact that there's more of this that I don't know. So it just puts me in a space of discovery, especially with the writing process of it. Barnaby, just going back, something you said earlier in your beautiful opening statements really struck me. Talking to people about something we don't understand. We find ourselves talking to people about something we don't quite understand. And that is like so far, just within the first few weeks of this practice, the organizing principle for me. I don't understand truly what this is, but it puts me in a place of discovery and humility, especially in an environment where we're always trying to know more culturally. So to be in a space intentionally where there's a sense of, no, there's so much here I don't know, and I'm going to engage, especially in the writing practice, like I said, in a process of discovery. So there's a real humility in it for me so far. And maybe I was going to ask this, Barnaby, earlier as just a question, but would open up to the group how language comes into this for folks. I'm so interested in like the linguistic aspect of this, the fact that for me so far, it's the discoveries taken the form of writing, and how we can think of words as, containing sort of carriers of archetypes, or the energy, or even as a mediating kind of gate between the conscious and the unconscious. So that would be sort of a question to the group around how language and words have come into your practice. Because so far the discoveries for me have been really exciting, that sitting down with 30 minutes blocked and having no sense of where any of it's going to go. And then those little moments of discovery or energy or momentum in the writing itself that I found really curious and exciting. So a few thoughts there.
Sister Sarah, do you want to jump in, or shall I? Yeah, thank you all, and thank you, Barnaby, for this beautiful time together. And I'm literally staring at a Post-it note of something that Carol said during one of our group sessions I don't even know when that was, a month ago, 2 months ago. And I love to, and Alexander, to answer your question, I love to paint and draw, but it's not for kind of public consumption. It's for it's kind of, a lot of time, it's my ally practice. It's touching into my heart. So it's not always, my languaging is not always with words. But I remember, Carol, you said, there's table world, and then there's ally world. And so I have a little Post-it note that I look at a lot. It has a little picture. I drew a little table, and I wrote table world. Don't forget, it's just table world. And it's next to a quote that, I don't know if I said it, Barnaby said it, somebody said it in one of our fellowship meetings, and it says, it is a limitation of our languaging. It is not a limitation of our being. And so I always refer back to both of those things, because it helps me remember that even though I may not be able to put it into words, I can feel it in my heart. And this practice helps me remember that matters. That matters more than table world. Sometimes it matters more than anything. And the last thing I wanted to share was, and I think I've said it to several of the people here. I think one of my earliest experiences beyond sitting in maybe church as a kid, or going to art class or whatever, when you really get something in school, and it's not just an intellectual getting, but my mom had joined AA when I was 10, and I used to go to open meetings with her. So the meetings that, the non-members were allowed to go to. And as like an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, I thought these like 12-step programs were the fucking coolest things ever. It was like there was enough structure um, of these 12 steps, yet everybody's experience was totally different, and they all felt held and seen and loved and accepted and cared for, and like everyone mattered. And so Barnaby, I loved your PowerPoints, and anytime you want some keynote help, I'm here for you, brother. But you did a great job, and yeah, it's like I see my ally practice as this kind of updated 12-step program for everybody, because I don't know, it really helps us love and hold and be with all of our parts and see that we're all the same. So.
Can you all hear me okay? I have my headphones in okay. I'm just loving all of the radiance that is like sparkling and beaming across people's faces. Really taking that in. And yeah, there's this phrase that I have been working with a lot in my practice lately: multiplicity in oneness. And so it's like we come together and, we're like this infinite jewel, and we're each sparkling in one facet of the jewel, right? But it's just so magnificent to feel and see this mirroring. And I want to express so much gratitude to you, Barnaby, because I feel like I remember in my body the day that you decided to turn fully towards this exploration, without any idea of where it was going. It was just pure heart. It was pure longing for the divine. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody give up the solid ground in their life of professionalism and money and all that, just to turn purely toward the divine. So I wanted to say that, express my gratitude for that modeling. There have been many voices that I've been in dialogue with that have made me feel as though I didn't deserve to live. And so to be in this dialogue with the ally is so incredibly transformative, because I experience my ally just in these past few weeks of practice as like an unrepentant cheerleader. I mean, they are just like rah rah. They're like, go, yeah, you rock, woo. They're just like, I mean, they are so ecstatically in love with everything about me. It's totally almost like disorienting, the vastness of this cheerleader quality in my life. It was so unexpected, and it really makes me feel this sense. I really resonated with what Susan was saying about, like, it's been this balm to my loneliness, and it has been, I guess the last thing that I'll say is that when I thought that the sum total of the experiences of this body was who I was, that really made me suffer. When I thought that's all that there was, you know, I thought, my God, I'm like a walking failure. So to have this daily affirmation and connection with divinity, and then to see it sparkling back to me in my daughter's eyes, and my kitty cat, and in hummingbirds, and in the land, and in the ocean, the sound of the ocean, it's like, oh my God, I'm surrounded by the divine, and it's within me. It's magnificent.
May I add something?
Oh, yes, please.
I remember, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, I went to it was a leadership workshop led by Dr. Rabbi Shapiro. Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who's a non-dual rabbi. And he described a teaching, I think it's a Kabbalistic teaching, that you know, in front of each being, you know, maybe a few feet in front, there's an angel who's walking in front of us, and humans, non-humans, there's an angel walking in front of each of us saying, behold, here comes the image and likeness of God. And he actually had us get up and just walk around the room like we normally would, just walk around the room and say hello to one another and just kind of mingle around. And then he said, now really, you know, imagine that this angel is walking in front of you, and that each person that is in the room, there's the angel walking in front of them. And you know, and the angels are greeting each other first, and then our human selves are greeting. And then he had us walk around and notice how we, you know, to feel what it felt like in our body. You know, was there a difference in how we greeted one another, how we carried ourselves when we imagined this angel walking ahead of us? And when this experience came up when I started doing the ally practice with you, Barnaby, and or even before I started doing the practice, just hearing about your experience with the practice. And Sarah, as you were talking, it really that brought up that, it reminded me of that story again. And I feel as though that angel is our ally. And it's like, you know, and how much, remembering how I held my body, you know, when and how I looked someone in the eye, you know, and then thinking about how transformative the practice can be for each of us, and then how transformative that practice can be in our day-to-day relationships, you know, from the small, you know, seeing the cat and the wave and the bird, you know, like that each person we encounter is, you know, the image and likeness of God, and how transformative this practice can be, you know, even beyond my own experience. If I choose to bring that intentionality into my day and life.
It's so much the expression that Henry Corbin so often uses. He talks about this ally as the angel out ahead. I really want to just thank everyone for all their shares. Like my heart is just so, even though I got to sleep really late working on the slides. Like my heart is just like pulsing with tenderness. And I don't know if Angel, the director of the Garrison Fellowship, is still here, but I saw your hand up earlier, Angel, and you may have needed to take care of Sydney again. So just feel free to pop back if you got occupied. Thank you so much for those shares, and you all mean the world to me. Like, and I can't even comprehend how amazing it is to have like multiplicities of oneness that I am in relationship with around this practice. I wanted to open it up now to the whole group for folks. Maybe there are folks who haven't had a chance to share yet, and really just the invitation is to reflect on what's coming up for you now as you're hearing these shares, what's feeling alive for you. So really, here we are in this community gathering of co-explorers. What other voices of co-explorers would like to emerge in this moment? You know, I deliberately didn't make this event a how-to because I think in a sense, the metaphor of this being a relationship makes it not so, it's not the same as like just learning how to do a mindfulness practice. And so I'm very wary myself of, I don't do like things where I'm like, let me teach you the practice. What I've set up is co-exploration sessions where we do the practice by ourselves and then come together to receive the support, but in a way that orients to the practice or even allows, you could say, the practice to come into reflection or mirroring with each other through our conversation. But very simply, and this is why I definitely recommend Raff's book as a starting point, because it's all about the how-to. Very simply, it is using the process of active imagination, which that's what they call it in Jungian psychology. So you're kind of opening yourself up through the heart to the imagination, and you are in a simple dialogue practice with the ally. So you will write, literally, I will sit down and I will write my voice, and then I will write the ally's voice. And we talked about writing, and I really want to highlight, even though we might not notice it, how writing is a very embodied practice, right? We're taking this listening orientation, this openness of the heart, this engagement of imagination, and we're listening to something that actually comes through and will come out through the body onto the page. And the word has been brought up in, you know, I don't know every spiritual tradition, but at least in the Abrahamic traditions, the word and creation is so intertwined. So that's why I say the practice is really simple, but not necessarily easy, because in one sense, it's as simple as doing dialogue. If we go back to ancient times, like in ancient Egypt, when novices were perhaps going to become initiate priests at the temple, one thing they would do would be like a written dialogue practice with the god or the divinity of that temple. So there's something ancient and archetypal. And then I also sometimes think like, wow, like literacy, like Raff says, you can connect with the ally or the imaginary in so many ways. He just finds this writing to be particularly effective. And I think it's partly because it's very contained and structured and has this aspect of embodiment, and maybe engages these different aspects of us cognitively. But I think it's amazing to think like, wow, literacy didn't even exist at a broad level until recently, you know? Even the freedom to do a practice like this in many places still doesn't exist and hasn't existed until recently. So there's almost something like, maybe this practice couldn't even be engaged with at a larger level until more recent times. So something, just an interesting question of like, what is the timing of the emergence of a practice like this? But I've gone on longer than your reflection, so I'll stop now just to see if there's any other.
There is so much. There's just so much, and there's so much that could be addressed. But to be true to the practice, if that's what we're calling it, I have to say this. What I really want to do is stay with the joy. I want to stay with the lightness of being. I want to stay with the hope. Yes, and what's coming up for me, what the ally or the angel or the muse is requiring of me at this moment is this story. Barnaby asked us to note the native land on which we might be standing. I stand on the Tsuut'ina Nation land, 7 Treaty in Western Canada, gorgeous territory, ancient streams of heart moving through it. And as some of you may be aware, we recently discovered we unearthed the bodies of children that had been buried without ceremony and all kinds of other proper note at our residential schools. And indeed, the Pope was just here to make his amends. The morning after I heard of the second unearthing, I left my little house and I climbed a mountain, and I stood at the top of that mountain on this ridge, and I said, no more. Stop. This has to stop. We have to stop. How do we transmute this suffering? How do we learn? How do we move beyond this thing that we human beings are doing in so many different ways? And I heard the expanse around me resonate. I felt it, and I turned away. And then something asked me or called me, and I turned back again. And as I did, what I saw with this imaginal eye, with this eye of the heart, was this stream, this endless, infinite stream of mostly women, but people, shoulder to shoulder to shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. And they were all facing into this resonance, and they were all saying the same thing. This has to stop. We have to move beyond this place that we're at in our humanity. And as I looked at this endless stream of people, 2 women in front of me, directly in front of me, 2 Native women, imaginal women, moved aside and invited me to step in to that stream. And so then I was standing shoulder to shoulder to shoulder to shoulder with people who are in the past, with people who are still coming, all of us. And I realized the power of this imaginal heart and what it is that we are being asked to connect with. The late, great, wondrous Meister Eckhart, radical mystic of the Christian tradition. His radicality got him in trouble, as some of our imaginal work might. But he said that creation is eternally birthing. And I just love that image of this eternal birthing, this not repeating, that this freshness that can keep coming, this child, but never this child again, this snowflake, but never this snowflake again, this angel, this encounter, this group, this story, but never again. Ever birthing. And we get to be a part of that birthing. Alan Watts, another wondrous, great speaker of the heart, said, we come not into this world, but out of it like leaves from trees, that we are this, this creature with these outrageous capacities, composed of, by and for this creation, to serve. And our highest achievement is unconditional love. We get to come into this relationship with this creation itself. We get to touch into this thing that's moving through not just the world, but us individually. And this imaginal work is a portal. And we have to have the courage. We have to have the courage to face what we need to face. We have to have the courage to stand together and create these stories and love each other and recognize perhaps that what we really are is prayer. That what the earth created in the human form is a walking, talking prayer. Something that's able to create. Ibn Arabi said this: prayer is not a request for something. It is the expression of a mode of being, a means of existing and causing to exist, to create, a means of existing and causing to exist. It is prayer, and prayer is the highest form, the supreme act of the creative imagination. We're called to so much, and I think we've just touched into the beginnings, as Barnaby says, the beginnings. We're just beginning as we conclude this incredible 3 hours together. And there's just so much to come. The practice will practice through us. It will create us. It's like the poet Rilke, Salome, his friend, said, Rilke, you're not a poet, you are poetry. Let us become the imaginal. Let us become that prayer that Ibn Arabi noted that we already are. The heart is the portal. The hara is how we ground. Each other is how we share. And let us stand shoulder to shoulder in that creative field.
Thank you for bringing. Thank you for bringing the vision, Susan, the light, and the accountability for which courage is required. And yeah, after your words, I mostly am feeling silence and presence and reverence. And I feel so full today that I'm almost without words without a need to think of next steps, or because the next step, as Claire was calling into us, is really always this being. That's so many times I'd be in conversation with the ally, what do I do? And the message was just continue to meet me, continue to be. To return to being and connection, our birthright. So since I'm feeling so out of words, Susan, I know you and I talked before that you might feel us into some gratitude as a closing. And I do want to, again, underline that even though I may not be speaking to concrete next steps, that they will be forthcoming. And I just want to thank everyone for allowing me space to share my passion. So, Susan.
I
Excuse
think,
me, Carol.
sorry.
Carol.
Carol, okay.
Carol. Carol.
Well, gratitude. When we do the ally conversations with Barnaby, we always say gratitude as our last thought. And the ally work itself is a deep dive into the presence of gratitude as a practice that moves so far beyond affirmations, which are very lovely. I'm not saying they're not lovely, but the practice of gratitude in the ally work is about presence. And so let's close together by embracing the heart, moving into our hearts and embracing the known that is rising up, the clarity and the gift, whatever it is, that is rising up. Breathing in gratitude and breathing out gratitude. Breathing in this relationship that we've been sharing, however it manifests in your consciousness or your thinking or your being. Breathing in the knowledge that there is not only so much to be grateful for in what we have brought to the circle and what the circle has brought to us, but also in what the ally can share with us and has shared with us in that relationship of our private face to the divine and the collective allies who have gathered here today in a sacred circle. Gratitude, breathing in. Gratitude, letting go. Knowing that when we meet again, this circle will resonate in our conversations. And whether or not you do your ally work as Raff does it, or as your art demands, or however you are called to communicate from that private face with the divine, you are not alone in the world. We are together in this. And we are here.
Thank you so much, Carol. So, thank you for this community, this gathering, as I said, this co-exploration. Just dipping our toes into the shores of the imaginal. But I read this quote, it's so apropos. Ibn Arabi said the other day, I shared this with Michael, he was over for tea. He said, even the deepest ocean is not as deep as the very shore of our own heart. Let's actually Let's welcome Angel. I just want to acknowledge like Dr. Angel Acosta. He's just been such a powerful like guide for. He's been an angel, an ally for all of us in human form.
I heard my name.
Just the and just the way he's given space for me to support my growth and learning has been like more than I could ever have wished for. So welcome, Angel.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to say hello to everybody. I've been with you all along. I've just been taking care of my son today. I'm on a childcare duty. I would have said this in the beginning of our session today. I'll say it now, especially enriched by everything that came up, that this is really courageous work to break into practices, relational approaches to the divine, spirituality, whatever you call it. It's very, 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 very courageous work. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, Barnaby. You could have quit a long time ago, and our colleagues who are doing imaginal work, just sending you so much energy as you do this work, and to acknowledge the fellowship, and acknowledge the Institute for creating the container whereby a fellow can spend some time really thinking about their work. And this is the fruit of 2 years of deep reflection, and I am just honored that I have been able to sit with you and listen. And I remember 2 years ago when we've had our first call, you were telling me about the imaginable, and I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about, brother. And now as I turned towards you and opened my heart, I feel my imagination has become so much more expansive. And acknowledge you. I'm really proud of you. Thank you.